r/indieheads. Album discussion. Vampire Weekend. Father of the Bride. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more added music content. Fantastic summer album. I know, it's been a while since I've given VW more than a couple songs listen, and I didn't listen to any of the singles before the album came out. Sunflower has been stuck in my head since Friday and it's slowly killing me, and my other favorite songs on my last FM. It's way too catchy and fun. Sympathy slaps, and I really like How Long as well. However, I'm still really not a fan of any of the Haim tracks, and I really hate We Belong Together. It's an odd album for me. It has incredible highs and lows, but it's still a very solid album in their repertoire. I'm glad we got new VW. Personally, I thought Danielle worked pretty well in most of the tracks, especially Hold You Now, but We Belong Together is easily my least favorite. The Haim tracks sound like Fear from a different album, even though theoretically they form a thematic framework for the rest of the songs. I really don't like any of them. Like the album pretty good overall though. Absolutely loved it from start to finish. Even the few singles that I wasn't crazy for found a place in the track listing that made them work. On one hand, it's almost a straightforward Vampire Weekend album, if such a thing exists, but on the other hand everything still sounds remarkably fresh and creative, and doesn't really see the band retreading too much previous ground. Who knows how much of this is due to Rostam's departure. That being said, where this album hurts the most is lyrically. There's a couple places here where it really seems like Ezra and co don't have a lot to say. I think there's more places where they do, and I suppose to some degree the music speaks for itself, but where it's lacking, it's really lacking. Other than songs like Big Blue, We Belong Together, Harmony Hall or Stranger, this is a pretty hard record to latch onto. EMOTIONALLY*. But I might be the wrong person to weigh in here, especially with all the religious themes sprinkled throughout the record. Anyway, ramble over. Really solid album that's going to get way too much play from me this summer. Definitely one of my favorites of the year right now. Edit, not a 100% comprehensive list. Sorry for offending people. Alright, unpopular opinion time. I didn't like it. It bored me, and I felt like all the Haim tracks were very awkward. Almost all the songs showed a bit of promise, but failed to fully deliver. The singles are mostly good, but not a ton of standout tracks. Sounds very average to me. Same here. I thought they could have cut 4 or 5 tracks from the back half. It doesn't need to be so long. Sad to say it, but I felt the same way. After the first few tracks it just sort of turned into background noise and I wasn't really able to get into it. It's just super bland, especially when stacked up against their first album and Contrap. I like it, don't love it, but I definitely understand your opinion. After 6 years away, I didn't expect them to come back and release an album that sounds so similar to everything else they have done. And I agree that it's too long. IDK if that was done as a way to appease people for them being away so long. Agreed. I'd add that without Rostam doing all the production, even though they still use Serial Rich Chade, it's just not VW. It's like Ezra's Jug Band or something. Next. Lyrically, this might be my favorite VW album after Modern Vampires of the City, or maybe I'm just feeling it right now. It feels bittersweet, melancholic, and resigned, while still trying to hold on to a glimmer of hope. There's a sort of nostalgia, like the characters are trying to retreat from the world, but also coming to terms with its temporary nature. Several lyrics stand out, but the ending of Spring Snow particularly sticks with me, the way it ties together the impermanence of human lives/relationships with environmental change. How Long is probably the most blatantly pessimistic about it, but Hold You Now and Stranger have moments too. I don't have the right words, so my favorite pieces about the album are from Vulture and The Ringer. My least favorite track was We Belong Together. Only listened once, before skipping it on other listens, but I gained a new perspective on it from Ezra's FOTB track by track radio special, and gave it another chance. Still my least favorite, but I don't have the same aversion to it. Spring Snow, Stranger, Unbearably White, and How Long are among my favorites. Hold You Now was good but different the first listen, but it's steadily creeping into my top picks. Bambina does that thing I like where the lyrics are in stark contrast to the upbeat tune. I'd kind of avoided Sunflower and only listened once without paying much attention, maybe because of the meme/reactions, but it surprised me the most, and I actually loved it when I played the full album through. This album has some really great songs, and it showcases Ezra's songwriting talent as much as any other VW record. However, the lack of piano skill and arranging mastery really shows. Rostam created some truly amazing and deceptively complex parts like the airy, wandering synth runs in White Sky, the dueling organ/harpsichord lines in Step, the never-ending string assaults of M79, and the beautiful arpeggios at the end of A-Punk and the chaotic chorus of Holiday. In contrast, the pianos in Harmony Hall sound tame and lackluster. The strings on Unbearably White offer atmospheric eeriness, but ultimately remain stagnant and underwhelming. Sunflower's guitar lines are linear and one-dimensional. Overall, I find myself missing the interlocking chaos that forms the apex of so many of their classic songs from the first 3 albums. Surely I can't be the only one who feels this way. First album of Fizz, I find myself skipping songs. I get the White Album comparison/playlist thing, but the White Album is my least favorite Beatles album made at a time when the band was fighting with themselves and the label. Length aside, I feel like the biggest step back in this album is in percussion/rhythm. Not just drums, but that's a big part of it. The thing I liked most about VW is that every part of almost every song served the beat. From drums to upright bass to Ezra's vox, everything fit together to serve some really well crafted and fun stuff. I love to dance and move, so this chilled out album really lets me down. I didn't find myself noticing the drums or beat at all. To add, don't really think any of the melodies are that interesting either. The shift for the bridges and some choruses also seem really abrupt and made Sunflower worse, which probably would have been my fave. Though I know a couple people who have that as their weak track, so your mileage may vary. I adore this album, but I have to agree on percussion. I can think back on so many VW songs where the beat jumped out to me. Don't Lie, Finger Back, Cousins, Kids Don't Stand a Chance. The whole first album really. As hokey as this sounds, I used to play drums and love air drumming to their first 3 albums. I can't see myself really doing that to FOTB. That said, after 6+ years with this, maybe some will grow on me. VW is probably my favorite band, and I'd put this behind MVOTC, right beside Self-Titled, but above Contrap. Edit, more opinions. It really doesn't feel 58 minutes long to me. The first half goes by really fast. I think I like it so much because it's the most Beatles VW album, between the Sgt. Pepper strings on Rich Man, McCartney melodies on Sunflower and My Mistake, Harrison guitars on Big Blue, and Lennon vocals on Sympathy. I love how there are so many different sounds, but it still sounds cohesive. The production is a tad heavy-handed sometimes, and as I said above, I wish the percussion played a bigger role, but it's still a really fun listen. Edit 2. On this week's Time Crisis, Ezra makes the point that he thinks of FOTB as a guitar album, in contrast to MVOTC, which had few guitar riffs. I hadn't really thought about that, and as much as I love MVOTC, the guitar's prominence on this album is a welcome reversion to the style of the first 2 albums. There are so many great riffs here. Like a lot of people, this was one of my most anticipated albums of the year, and as such I was pretty excited to finally listen to it. I even used a VPN for the first time to listen to it a few hours early. But even on my first listen there were songs I wanted to skip. Now I'm not some skip happy playlist junkie. I very rarely skip around an album, unless I'm looking for a specific song, or if the drop in quality between songs is so detrimental to my experience that I need to skip. Listening to this album was of course the latter experience. There are some songs here that just don't fit into the point of being kind of annoying. Married in a Gold Rush is a good example of a song that could only fit into a much worse album. In fact, all the duet songs with Danielle Haim sound like something Southern moms would have listened to in the 90s. Maybe I'm just a banger addict who can't enjoy a track without a speedy bass line, but some of these tracks make me recoil in boredom. That said, there are still a ton of songs here I adore. This could have been cut down to a fantastic 15-song pop album. What we ultimately got, however, is my least favorite Vampire Weekend album. I never expected to enjoy another Vampire Weekend album. For me, the first 2 albums were fun, but didn't stick with me. I was then obsessed with MVOTC for a few months after its release, but they are now very different from the way that my tastes have evolved since then, and I've barely listened to them since 2014. The album has some incredible highlights that I absolutely love. Flower Moon, 2021, Jerusalem, New York, Berlin, How Long, Married in a Gold Rush. Maybe I like these because they are so different from the rest of my listening lately. I really think he's an incredible lyricist. Again, maybe because he's a bit different from my recent listening. As a whole album, I don't know if it's gonna stand out after the hype wears off, but I'm okay with that now. Once upon a time, I had to classify every album as good or bad, and I almost refused to let myself listen to a song if I felt like it came from a bad album. I only saw music as existing in the context whole albums. I've matured now, and I think that was ridiculous. I'm still gonna love Flower Moon, even if this album doesn't make it to my top 10 of the year. And that's okay. This album has added some great songs to my life, even if it isn't one that grips me as a whole body of work. One thing I've been thinking about this album that I'm curious to discuss with people is that weird fluid concept of album flow. To me, there are some good songs and some bad songs, but the way the album sounds as I listen to it as a whole is that some of these songs really rub up against each other poorly as I listen to them. There are a few different styles that Vampire Weekend experiment with, while ultimately still serving the summer love stylings, but the way the tracks are assembled keeps pulling me abruptly out of the flow. It's not even the track sequencing necessarily. I just feel like I can't get a beat on the album for more than 2 or 3 tracks in a row. Biggest specific example for me is Sympathy, which comes at a great moment in the album for something harder, something that is familiar, but plays with the VW formula in an aggressive way. I feel like having Sunflower follow it not only seems to undercut that, but also feels like it accentuates the annoyance of those vocals. I feel like I could grow to like the silliness of the vocal intro in isolation, but putting it after Sympathy, I don't know why, but it feels disruptive. It makes the tracks less than the sum of their parts. These are similar experiences to other divisive long albums such as Hail to the Thief or The Color in Anything. However, those have a spontaneity in their track sequencing that makes me actually enjoy the unpredictable nature of the listening experience. Whatever formula makes me enjoy those albums is missing here. I'm mainly commenting this because I'd like to hear from other people who maybe shared similar feelings or who felt the opposite and thought that the changes in style enhanced their listening experience. Otherwise, I'd still call this an enjoyable summer listen with a lot of appropriately VW themes and some cool highlights like Harmony Hall, This Life, and Sympathy. I actually really like the flow of the album, can't put my finger on why, but I like the singles a fair bit, and I enjoy them even more in their placement on the album. It feels less grand, but in a way more mature to me. The intro to Sympathy is something like I think I took myself too serious / it's not that serious, and I think that's sort of the mentality that made this album different from modern vampires. There's a sense of breathing room and spontaneity from the tracklist that I enjoy. I hated Sunflower on first listen, but now coming between Sympathy and Flower Moon, I love it. Just my opinion though. Can see how people would feel opposite. Take my opinion with a grain of salt, because our positions are different about Color in Anything, and Hail to the Thief too. Thanks for watching, fellow music lovers. Like and subscribe for more Did Music posts, and let us know in the comments if there are any music related threads you'd like posted. Don't forget to wash your hands.